Alright guys, welcome to another video. If you clicked on this, your clutch release bearing went out or your clutch went out on your Toyota Corolla 20 or hatch. I'm pretty sure this is good for generations of 18 and 22. This is a manual, and all I know is that the chassis is hatchback. So I'm not sure if this is going to work for sedans. So I'm going to get right into it. Okay, so before we actually do get into it, I will show you everything that you will most likely need. I don't know if your car is perfectly the same as mine. I'm assuming it is, but I don't want to tell you this is all you need and you need something else. So be wary of that. I am going to tell you that you will maybe need a clutch alignment tool. I do recommend it, but that's a recommendation. I did it without it, just using a marker. And this is also another recommendation, is 2 axle nuts, because mine were a little wonky because factory they come bent so that it doesn't come undone. So it was a little wonky getting those on, so I would replace those if you can possibly. I don't really know, you can go to Toyota for that or maybe Advanced, I'm not sure. I would recommend also getting a slide hammer and an extended fork end, just not the normal size. Just the slide hammer just makes some things a little easier getting the axles out. But technically you also don't need it. You can hit it with the hammer, but just go to your local AutoZone, because you have to go there anyways to get you have to get gearbox oil that most of the time you will have to order. I will recommend this one from the guy that helped me. It's Redline 70W or 75W weight gearbox oil. And then also you will need DOT3 or 4. I put DOT3. I put DOT3 in the reservoir for the brake and clutch, and then when you are pumping that, if you are doing it by yourself, just get a piece of wood, wedge it between your clutch to get the drain, and then tighten it back up, and then remove the wood, pump the clutch again, go back, drain until it's no bubbles, and then your drain plug is also by your is by that little that piece you're replacing. So you'll see it, you'll understand it when you're there. And then after that, these are going to be the part numbers that you will need. I'm going to read it out, but I'm also going to throw it up. I'm actually just going to throw it up on the screen. It's going to take 2 seconds for me to put it there. I paid around $550 for the total parts from Toyota. I would not recommend going anything off of Toyota unless you wanted to do like a stage 2 type of thing. But these parts I know will fit you, but I don't know about anything else. I do know that there are stage 2 flywheels out there and other larger discs that can handle more heat and are stronger, but I'd recommend staying stock with this car unless you're trying to push power or somehow, I don't know. But once you do get all of this, you will also have to put another like at least 100 to 200 into it, whether it's oil, axle nuts, the alignment tool, the slide hammer. But bottom line, you need probably around 6 to 620 for this job, period, just in parts. And then if you are doing it by yourself, you're not going to be paying for labor. So yeah, I think that's pretty much going to be all. I'm trying my best to remember absolutely everything. I would just recommend having another person nearby, because bleeding the clutch and also getting the transmission back in, it's a lot easier if you have another person there. So yeah, I'm going to talk and throw up pictures. This process is a little more intense, so if you're not very confident mechanically inclined, then I would recommend getting somebody that is. And also I'm also going to name off some of the tools, but first I do have to give thanks to Hatchback. I'm going to throw up his Instagram. He has literally led me through this whole process. If I didn't have him, then I would have no idea what I'm doing. So first, I'm going to name a bunch of tools off the top of my head. It's not going to be all of them because I used a bunch of miscellaneous tools. But you're going to need a 8 mil, 10 mil, 14 mil, 17 mil, 21, 22, and 24. You're also going to need like a 1/2 inch and 3/8 ratchet. And the 8 mil has to be not a socket and wrench. It has to be an actual like, it just can't be a wrench. It has to be like the actual, just normal wrench. You're also going to need a crowbar, the longer ones. I'm probably going to throw up pictures of all of this in a list. You're going to need an axle nut socket. You're going to need a good, it's going to make your life a lot easier, but you don't need it. You're going to need a ratchet gun. But yeah, those are just some things off the top of my head. If I remember more, then I'll explain that later. But so first, while you have the car on the ground, you're going to take off the battery and the battery tray. And then when that pulls up, well, first, when you also get the tray out, there's going to be your wiring harness like mounts on the front of the battery tray. You're going to have to disconnect those two. I'm throwing up pictures as well, I'm assuming. You're going to disconnect those two and then just leave them hanging. Make sure you put tape over top of them so dirt doesn't get inside of it. After you get all of the wiring out of the way and the positive and negative out the way, you're going to take off the intake, or the air intake. Most of the time, stock ones will just be a box. Take the whole box out. Then once you get all that, disconnect the clutch and the brake. It's going to have a little pin on top and also 14 mil bolts, I think. They might be 12 actually. And it's just going to be 3 of them. And then those lines can just hang. And then once you get that all disconnected, you're going to go and lift up the car, take off the front and right wheel, and you make sure that you have good clearance. Like I put these jacks all the way up basically on the front and in the back. I left them low. If you have a lift, that's probably preferred, but you can still do it without, like I did. So once you take the wheels off, you're also going to have skid plates and covers. Take all of that off except the ones that are front under, like your radiator. You can leave that one. You don't even need to get up there. And then also you're going to take off, there's a cover on the side of your trans on the driver's side. You're going to have to rip that, or not rip it off. You're going to have to take it off. And then once you did all of that, drain your trans, and then while you're at it, take your axle nuts off on both sides. So that's for the top and the side. And so once you get the axle nuts off, you can start getting under the car now. So you can disconnect. I did this differently than he told me, but I was having trouble getting my axles out from the transmission. So I basically took out almost all the subframe bolts except like 2 on the passenger side, so it wouldn't just fall out. It just like literally it went from here being normal to like here, so that I could pull the trans out with the axles, because my axles did not come out of the transmission. They came out of the hubs, but I just took it out with the transmission and the axles together. So once you have the subframe dropped, and then the transmission, once you get it, there's going to be so if you are doing this with the axles just staying on, you're going to have to disconnect the bottom mount for the transmission that it connects to the subframe, and it's going to be one big bolt through the center and like 14 mil that go up in the transmission. You're going to pull that little mount out, and it's just going to hang. You can leave it hang. It's probably going to make the engine droop a little bit, but you're fine. I left it there, and also the guy that told me, he also left it there. Then after that, you're going to start taking all of the small, all the sensors, all the wires, everything that's connected to the transmission, you take it off. And it's not even that much. It really should only take you like 30-ish minutes. And then you're also going to have to take out your clutch release bearing hardline. I'll show a picture of that as well. It's just a little metal clip you pull up and then you pull out. It's super simple. And then you're going to just have that out the way, and you're also going to have to undo the bolt that holds it onto the transmission. After that, you have basically access to the bell housing bolts. So I actually made this little thing for your bell housing bolts. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I would recommend doing this so you don't forget, because there's 10 bell housing bolts, but they're all different sizes and they're also coming in different ways. So I would make this, because if you don't, then you might forget where these go, and it'd be very annoying for you to do that. They range from, I think, 12 and 14. I don't think they go anything below or higher. So that's what I would do for bell housing bolts. When you actually take all of those bolts out, it won't want to come out. So what I did was I threw up a jack under the transmission and then another one beside it that was picking up the engine. And so I tried to because when you undo the bell housing bolts, I had a little gap at the top, and so I jacked it up so the gap was now at the bottom, and then I put a piece of wood in the space and I let the jack down, and then the top of the transmission came out while the bottom still had the spacer wood in there, and then that dropped out. My piece of wood was probably an inch thick, So as long as you get an inch around somewhere, because it doesn't want to move, the transmission will stick to the actual engine and without any bolts inside of it. But just please make sure that you have everything disconnected, because if you drop something and the sensor is still connected, it will obviously rip it out. So like I said, the axles, I did leave them on. You're gonna have to loosen the subframe bolts or take it out. You're also gonna have to undo the lower control arm, not to the hub, but I just took all four, or two on each side, all four lower control arm bolts out so that my control arms could literally pull out. If you do leave the axles on the driver's side, you will have to take out your sway link so that you can maneuver the axle over the sway bar and then around on the bottom and then put the sway link back over. I know that sounds a little complicating, but when you get there, you understand what I mean. After that, you're gonna take out like your whole transmission, and what I did was I used 2 jacks holding the transmission all the way up, and then I slowly lower it down and pull it, and lower it down and pull it, because you can't just pull it out this way because you don't have the clearance. You have to pull out, lower, pull towards the front of the car, lower, pull out, lower towards the front of the car. So like you're coming out, like if this is the engine and this is the transmission, and then the car is like, the back of the car is you and the front of the car is me, you have to pull this way. And basically it just takes a bunch of finagling to get the whole transmission out. With the axles, it does make it a lot more challenging. Once you get the lower control arm bolts out and pulling the hubs, they should come out pretty easy. If not, you can get a slide hammer like I did and slide hammer the axle end from the hub. Be careful, please, that you don't mess up your the actual end of the axle, because so once you get the transmission out, you're going to be able to have access to inside the bell housing and also engine side. So when you do get there, I'll show you pictures. You have to take off your clutch flywheel, and then once you take that off, the disc will also fall out with it, so be careful, it will drop if you are intending on reusing it. I would not recommend reusing any of this stuff, but you technically, in all seriousness, you could reuse the clutch and flywheel. Just be wary that some fluid might get on that, and the clutch disc may absorb that and not work properly. So I would just replace it anyways, because I mean, there's not really, it's literally right in front of you, so why would you not replace it? But anyways, to each their own. So you get the new parts on. The torque spec for the flywheel, I do believe, is something. I'm probably going to put it up here because I don't remember. It's either 36 or 40 something, but also that's not something to play around with. So I'll also show you the highlighter method. The guy on Instagram told me, or the guy that was helping me through this told me to get a highlighter, put some tape around it until it fits with the disc, and then you put it in and you center it once you try to screw in the flywheel to the engine, and then center it in the middle of the fingers of the flywheel. And so if you do have a clutch alignment tool, I would recommend getting that, but if you don't, it's not the end of the world. It's just you got to be very, very particular where that disc goes. And you do have a little bit of a tolerance, but when you slide it, you do have a little bit of a tolerance. I'll go over that later. So once you have that in, you're also going to be replacing your clutch release bearing on your transmission on your input shaft. And that's super simple. The clutch release bearing that is in the part number comes with 2 bolts, and you just replace the little black part with like the slide black part that connects on the outside with the hard line. That's really simple. You should be able to get the parts on within 15 minutes. It genuinely took me 15 minutes. And then you just reverse that whole process. I'm not really going to go in depth about like putting everything back, because I just explained like everything that you really need. You just got to do it backwards now. So I would really just write all this down and put check boxes next to it, and then when you're done, you go back up that list to make sure you don't forget anything. When you do go and you do go back, just make sure that you do like 50 checks. I know pretty much everybody would do this if they are doing this themselves. So yeah, we're gonna. So that's basically it. I am gonna give you a little bit of a few tips, and then I also am gonna go over. I'm just going to give you a few tips that I remember from the top of my head. Alright, so just a few tips, or just something that I thought I wish I knew before, was that when you're taking the bell housing bolts off, make sure that you don't wait for the hardest one. And the hardest one's gonna be by your, like, almost, it's by your firewall. It's the one closest to your firewall. And it's gonna be tucked up in there behind an axle. Well, okay, so the engine, the back of the engine right here, the back of the engine is right here, and the firewall is right here. This is the axle that's going to the passenger side, and a cover that goes right here, and it's right here. Like, it's in this little section where the axle's right here, and then the cover goes like this to the transmission, and right here is the bolt that connects the trans to the engine. And start with that one, or I would just say start with that one because that's the hardest one, and I waited to that one was the last one. And there was already weight on it, so it was even more tight, so don't do that. That took me a while, and it was very frustrating. But if you do have a ratcheting wrench that's a 14, then use that because it's like zero tolerance for you to like have to like move around because you don't have a lot of space because of the cover, the axle cover. Another tip was the wood thing, putting the wood in between the bell housing and the transmission once you do get it loosened and all the bell housing bolts off. I would tell you to, once you get a gap, just put the wood in there and then let the jack down, and then it will pull the top evenly. Because the input shaft is very, very, very hard. Something that I didn't mention actually is when you're putting in the input shaft, it has to be genuinely perfect. I tried to do this myself for about like 3 hours and it did not work. Even if you think you do or can, just get somebody else. It takes 2 seconds if you have somebody else. And if you do this with the axles on and try to get the input shaft on with the axles, make sure that your axles aren't in the way when you're pushing the trans in, because that was my problem. So when you're putting the input shaft in, you have to get it perfect, line up the bolt holes, don't force it because it should just slide in. I had to give it a little bit of persuasion, but for the most part it will just slide in. Oh, in the marker method, I would just get a clutch alignment tool if you could. So, biggest thing, yeah, I think that's basically it for tips. So I think that kind of covers it. That's pretty much it. I hope I put enough pictures up there. And if you need to pause it whenever, obviously, or slow it down because I'm talking really fast because I also don't want to make this video 50 years long. So I think that's it. My car does drive, so I'm a testament, and also the guy that taught me how to do this is a testament to that this works. I would rate that. If you don't, I will say, if you don't know how to put on your coilovers or don't have the tools to put on coilovers, do not do this. Coilovers was dirt simple compared to this. This is a lot more involved. You can be very confident about it, but to be honest with you, I was not confident about this at all. So if you're not confident, don't be discouraged, but I will say that you do need to be mechanically inclined and also have a decent memory with where bolts go, what sizes they are. But I'm not trying to discourage you from not doing it. Just be very, very careful with all the bolts that you have. Label them, draw diagrams, take a lot of pictures, and make sure that if you look at the pictures that I have, I literally launched so many pictures. Like, that's not even an eighth of all of the pictures that I took. Take all the videos you want, make sure you have a flashlight, and I use my camera on my phone to record on the tight spots. So it's not bad, but hopefully this was a good guide, a good help. I'm going to throw out my Instagram. If you do have questions, you can just DM me. I'm also going to throw up, actually I'm not going to throw up his Instagram for that. Don't go to the other guy for questions because I also don't know if he wants that. But yes, if you do have questions, just DM me. Most of the time I will answer within at least a few hours. So if you do have any questions, just let me know. And if you did make it this far, then I wish you luck because it's not that bad in theory, but just random hiccups here and there. So for me, it took about 3 days, but it really only took me probably like 20 hours. And without hiccups, I probably could have done it in 10. But I did have hiccups like normal. So yeah, thank you for watching the video, and I hope that you are able to get your trans back on. So, good luck.